Hello there, and thank you very much for joining us today in this new Azure Portal how-to video. Today we learn how to use links in workbooks and the Hive view. And for that we have Shika Jain, who is going to show us how to do that. So thank you very much for joining us today, Shika.
Thanks for having us, Leon, and your how-to video series has been so popular with workbook community. Today, what we're going to talk about is, workbook by itself is complete, but you also want to connect it to other places, like other blades in Azure portal. How do we do that so that we can tell a whole story? And the other thing is that we in Azure provide so many resources, and you want to look at it at a bird's eye view, completely identify, oh, this is the VM that I need to address, rather than going one by one. So I'm going to show a high density view, the Hive cluster, and how to build it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see it.
Let's get started. So what I'm going to show today is the Beehive view, what you see here in this workbook. This is a high density view, which lets me see in this particular workbook, I have 25 virtual machines and telling me the CPU utilization of each of the machine. And in one shot, I can see which one is performing well, which is overloaded, which is not even running. And one of the other things that I'm going to show you is how to interlink things. In this particular case, I can link this to a different virtual workbook, which tells me how these VMs are doing. So each link here shows me the same workbook for that particular virtual machine. So it's interesting to build these kind of linking. So let's get started. First of all, as I was scrolling, you would see that you can maximize your screen view here by toggling the menu item. And then there is a feature called toggle full screen view, and then you can zoom in and zoom out to just make it more bearable. So to get started on how to build this, I have this raw file. In the last few videos, we've gone through how to build these selectors and how to get data from metrics. So this is just basically pulling all the subscriptions that I've selected, the resources, the time range. So in the last 1 hour, what's the CPU utilization of each of these VMs? And I am just using a basic visualization of a grid here. So the first step is to change it to graph view. When I call it graph, it's going to pop up a setup column where it's going to show the settings. And in this setting, you see where the layout here says you can either choose a graph or a Hive cluster. We're going to build a Hive cluster, so that's what I'm going to nominate. And 3 things in the grid that you would have noticed were subscription, virtual machine, and the value of the metric. So in my Hive cluster, I want each node to be identified by the virtual machine. That's the resource name. And I'll come to grouping later here. What will happen is when I apply it, you would see a basic version of the Hive chart come up. Now, this is not as pretty as what I showed you in the beginning, so let's keep working on it. One of the first things that I'm going to do is talk about the 5 elements of the Hive node. First is the top content, what you see on the top. Right now, it's showing me subscription. What I want to see is the virtual machine. So I'm going to set it up. And if you remember from the previous video, we can do the rendering of the virtual machine like a resource. So it looks like a resource type. I don't need the resource icon. I can make it a link. This is the first step where I can say, OK, when I click on this item, take me to the view of the virtual machine by saying resource overview. And this is how, if I apply these changes now, you would see the change on the top. So each of the virtual machine name is now qualified. Now let's go to, there's nothing on the left content that I want to render, but center content is my CPU utilization, which is this percentage. Let's make it pretty by making it, it's a number. So let's keep it number. I don't need any color. I'll come back to linking it later, but here, let's make it reflect as a percentage. That's what it is. And now when I've done this, you can see the difference. Now, the other thing that's still missing is you saw the color coding in the other version. So This coloring comes from the options we have here. We can either use thresholds, which is more programmatically controlled of, if CPU utilization goes above a percentage, change a color. But let's go with the basic of heat map. What heat map allows me to do is say that for this node, when the CPU value is, it'll just give me a different color set, and I can go from green to red. So from 0 to 100, it'll just gradient it and show me the values. So here you see how it becomes now more useful and visually telling me that this one is requiring attention. The other thing that you would have noticed is the ones that don't have value kind of use the white space, so it are not very readable. I have an option to color code these empty values. I can choose any color. Gray kind of makes the essence of, it's not functional. So let's just use that. And this is in quick in 3 steps, you get this view. Now, one thing you would have noticed it above here, I had selected 2 subscriptions. I can do one more thing here by using an element called group by, wherein here you have group by field, and I can say group by subscription. And when I do this, it'll break this hive into 2 parts, one for subscription 1, the other for subscription 2. So that way I can have multiple subscriptions selected and see a high density view of these elements. And I can, use the basic things that we learned in other sessions too, to make this a link, apply the items, kind of go through this. This is a very standard way of linking any of the resource to their overview page by just selecting resource view. And you can open it in a context or otherwise. So this is bare bones. We got this. Now on this particular, the previous version that I showed you, we were clicking and opening another workbook. And this can be done by a thing called link. And this link is available for most of the content. In this particular case, I'm going to use it as a link. Previously, we've been using primarily resource overview and saying, okay, just do the cell. But I'll show you another way. Let's say if I wanted to show what were the alerts being triggered for this virtual machine, I can say resource overview, and then there is a tiny little thing called menu item. So let's switch over to virtual machine. In any virtual machine resource overview, resource blade, what you would see is overview section will always take you to the resource overview, but these are all menu items in Azure portal. So if I were to look at the URL, you see the menu item value here is alerts. Now I can leverage this and paste it in the menu item. And when I do that, these links here, now it'll pop up a window, which would be the alert window. It's the same thing. So without losing the context, I can get to that. And I know it opened another blade, but you could control that by setting a context blade. So this could be different menu items that you desire to be. So that's one way of doing it. The other could be that I do not want to just see alerts, but I want to create alerts. So that also is available here. So whenever, let's say this CPU was going high, I want to set an alert on it. I could use the create alert rule and say for this resource, and I can say open in context blade. And when I apply this and click this, it would open up a create alert rule blade. So it's all in place. I didn't have to go figure out what it is and do stuff. So those are a couple of things that you can do with linking. Now, if I had already created a workbook, I can also link that. And this is done by selecting the option called workbook template. And there are these various parameters that open up that can be used to specify, what it is going to be. So here I'm selecting that it is based on column, which is the name, that every, it'll pass it as a parameter to that. And then I'm going to provide a static value of what that workbook is. Now I could have coded it in a parameter and use that, but here for the sake of demo, I'm just going to use static values and specify this input. And this is a pre-built workbook, so you could have built it in advance and used it as a reference later. And this is just the gallery where this workbook is sitting. So when I do this, you would see what would happen is a click on this would now open the new workbook. Now, again, I forgot to check the context linking. I can do that by going and making sure that I apply this and it continues to function. So this is a quick demo of how to link different things, different blades, and have this high density view. I have other ways of using this by going to, for instance, I can go to another kind of workbook where I could just link another workbook which has help information. Here I can pop up all the help related information, or in this workbook, you would see that I'm going to advise a recommendation or resource help. So, it makes it a full narrative within the workbook that you can tell the story.
Thank you very much, Shika. And thanks every one of you for watching. Please try this out. Let us know what you think. Leave us a comment in the comment section, follow us on Twitter, and look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.